In today's Locked On Pelicans, I'll tell you why the final two shots for New Orleans raise bigger questions about the team, but also why two things you saw this weekend are actually really good for New Orleans in the long term. It's the Monday episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans at NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Monday, we're going to have a whole week's worth of shows for you, even with the holiday in here, because, look, there's a lot to talk about with this team. And in tomorrow's show in particular, look, let's talk about Willie Green, David Griffin, job security, what changes need to happen. We'll get into all of that in tomorrow's episode. But I want to get into what happened at the end of the game against the Denver Nuggets, that final shot in regulation, and also the shot that CJ McCollum took in overtime, both misses. What happened there and why that speaks kind of volumes about what's going on with the issues around this team. Then we're going to look at the defense looking a whole lot better, kind of like last year, but why it's not enough. And then Trey Murphy's growth and Yves Missi's growth as well. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast coming to you like nobody else does. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. Let me know if you're an everydayer in the comments down below. So let's start off with the second of the two games this weekend. Both losses for New Orleans. First, losing against the New York Knicks, a game they really should have won, and then losing to the Denver Nuggets, a game they also should have won. At least that one was a little bit closer at the end, going to overtime here as the Pelicans fall 132-129. But I want to look at two shots in particular. And they both come from CJ McCollum, and they both come in clutch situations. In clutch situations were not great for the Pelicans last year. They were one of the worst clutch teams. They were supposed to be better this year. So what happened at the end? The final shot of regulation, about 9 seconds or so left in there after the Pelicans call a timeout, inbound the ball, CJ McCollum airballs a three. Look, on that final play, it was Dejounte Murray getting the ball to CJ McCollum. There was a strong closeout on him, and he basically shot a contested three over two defenders, and that's part of the reason why he airballed it here. And honestly, when I rewatched this a couple of times, Denver did a really good job. I don't actually have a ton of issues with this play. You had Jordan Hawkins in the corner on the right side, and he had been hot in this game. We'll get into him more a little bit here in a minute. He had 25 points, was a leading scorer for New Orleans. To not get him the ball seems like it's like, why would you toss it to him? He was open. But he actually wasn't that open. You saw a good job by Nikola Jokic rotating over from down below the basket to actually take away that three. They left Yves Missi under the rim open for a minute. And I don't know if CJ McCollum, a minute, like 2 seconds. I don't know if CJ McCollum was going to actually be able to make that pass to him. Overall, when I look at this, getting the ball to Hawkins wasn't realistic. His shot would have been blocked by Jokic. And I don't know if there would have been enough time for him to really get one off. So getting the ball to him was not the decision. Honestly, on that final play, it just seemed overall well defended by the Denver Nuggets. That maybe speaks to New Orleans inbounding the ball and not having a good enough play call drawn up. I'd agree with that. But overall, what you saw there wasn't a bad decision by CJ, given everything that you saw in that final possession. It was probably the only decision that he has. What was worse was in overtime with 19 seconds left, and in transition after CJ grabbed a rebound, took it down the court, dribbles into a contested mid-range fall-away jumper. That's the one that's bad. That is the shot that you just can't take. a 19-foot fall-away jumper isn't going to be the shot. You had Yves Missi in the short roll or work the ball around for a better shot here. And what this says to me, and the takeaway I want you to have from this is they've got to be better than this in clutch situations. Just getting a win right now would feel really good, I think. But they were supposed to be better in clutch situations this year. This is why they traded for Dejounte Murray. He was supposed to fix this. But overall, you're still seeing kind of the same problems exist. That also exists overall with their offense, right? This is them not having a plan, not having kind of a hierarchy for who should be taking the shots. It shouldn't be CJ at the end of the games here. We kind of know that by now. They need to generate a better look. And while that first one at the end of regulation, given the situation, it is what it is, the play call should have been better. But it wasn't. This is an area that they were supposed to have improved in, and it's clear that they haven't. And that, to me, is concerning. And when you see their offense just go flat for stretches when it's just hero ball, isolation-style play, which doesn't work. Every team can defend that. Look, you can't be doing that in the final shot of the game. You've got to work the ball around. There needs to be something happening there. Otherwise, you're easy to defend. CJ was really easy to defend on that final shot of the game. Some of that's on him, but most of that's on the play call, in my opinion. You just can't do that. There needs to be more movement, more creativity. It also speaks to kind of Hawkins in overtime, right? You have 5 minutes of overtime, and Jordan Hawkins, who was your leading scorer, was on a heater all game, didn't get one shot in overtime. It's the same kind of problem there. When adversity hits, this team just doesn't have a response. They don't know what to do. And they haven't for a couple of years now. And they don't look like they're improving in that area either. This game against Denver, they could have won very, very easily. They were up 15. You're up double digits on the New York Knicks too. Both these games you could have won. And in both games, they just fell apart. The team, the opponent gets close. Jalen Brunson gets hot. More on that in the next segment. And they don't have a response. It's like the Mike Tyson quote, right? Like everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face or what have you. And here, whenever New Orleans gets punched, they don't punch back. They don't respond well. They just fall apart, and they have for years. Murray was supposed to fix this, but if you're going to trade for him to kind of fix things in the clutch, it can't be CJ just dribbling into contested mid-range jumpers. That ain't it. And that's why New Orleans lost this game. Unbelievably disappointing end and just kind of a heartbreaking loss when you played pretty well on the second night of a back-to-back. You held Nikola Jokic in check for a half, 3/4 really before he got hot late on. But overall, you did enough to beat a good enough team, we'll call the Nuggets. And they didn't. And I don't think that's, they're not trying to lose games and trying to tank even though the season's effectively over. It just kind of speaks to the overall problems with this team that they're not actually improving in those areas. There are a couple of areas, though, that are improving. Let's look at the defense. It's looking better, and that but's pretty important, and you saw that happen in the game against the New York Knicks. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by the Skylight Frame. This thing is awesome, by the way. Look, do you struggle to find the perfect gifts during the holidays? Maybe gift giving isn't your love language. You overthink it and wind up with something disappointing or nothing at all. Are you tired of wasting money on useless clutter that no one really wants or needs? Or are you trying to buy something for a person that just seems to have it all or that's impossible to shop for? Well, we've got the perfect gift for you. Skylight Frame is the touchscreen digital photo frame your whole family will love. You can upload thousands of photos with your phone and then watch them appear in seconds. This is great to give to a loved one that lives in a different city than you. If you want to show your parents or their grandparents pictures of your kids, you can just upload them from the phone and then thousands of miles away, they're going to walk out, look at the frame, and see a new photo that was taken the other day, and you're going to be able to feel really, really connected in a way that you haven't been before. And you can invite friends and family to easily share photos via the free Skylight mobile app that you can just sign up for. No account or subscription required here. And the touchscreen is a game changer. You can swipe through photos, tap to see new photos sent, tap to the heart button to say thank you to the sender. It's just a really cool option here. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, you get $20 off your purchase of a skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NBA. That's skylightframe.com/NBA. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NBA. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, coming to you like nobody else does, breaking down what you want to know about this team, what's going wrong, what's going right, and we're going to look at some positives here next with some asterisks on them when it comes to that. And then in tomorrow, let's look at Willie Green. Let's look at David Griffin. The conversation that y'all want to hear, we're going to do it for you in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts because you're not going to want to miss it. Now, if you want more Locked On Pelicans, more about what's going on with this franchise and kind of the pivotal state that they're in, we've got the free daily newsletter. You can sign up over at lockedondaily.com. So one thing that I've noticed the past, particularly 2 games, but even a little bit longer than that, is the defense for the Pelicans looks better. That game against the Houston Rockets, I really thought was eye-opening. They were atrocious defensively. And it was really summed up by the number of fast break points that the Houston Rockets had. And it wasn't like New Orleans turned the ball over in that game to just give the opponent fast breaks. They were just running after made shots and misses, and New Orleans was being lazy and just not getting back on defense. For a team that has ranked as the 6th or 7th, depending on where you're looking, best defense the past 2 years, to look like you just don't give up whatever, let's say, on that side of the ball isn't acceptable here. You might be bad offensively because you're missing Zion Williamson, because you're missing Brandon Ingram, but you can give a damn on defense and you can try on that side of the ball. And you saw the team had not been doing that. Against the New York Knicks at home, they looked different. New Orleans was forcing turnovers. They were getting out and running. And that's a way that this team can look really good. And that's a reason why in that first half, they were winning. They were forcing turnovers. They were limiting the Knicks. And they were up by as many as 14 in that game. And then it all fell apart in the second half. And we'll get to that here in a second. Against the Denver Nuggets, you forced 23, where'd the number go? 22, turnovers for the Denver Nuggets. It allowed New Orleans to get out and run in the fast break, 23 points in the fast break. Every possession you get in the fast break in transition is a possession you don't need to be playing in the half court, where without your 2 best players, your 2 best offensive players, you're really struggling to score at times. And so when the defenses come alive, you see them get up. They were up by, we said 14 against the Knicks, 17. Ooh, that makes it even worse. Against the Denver Nuggets here. The defenses looked alive at times, and they looked more like a Willie Green team. What they want to do, what this team is trying to do, is force a turnover, get out in transition, and run, and just try and get easy buckets here. But they're struggling with the execution of that, which speaks to the offensive issues and some of the players here. But also, when your opponent adjusts, New Orleans doesn't seem to have an answer. So while the defense is good, it's not good for 48 minutes or 53 minutes in this case of the Denver Nuggets when it goes to overtime, and it needs to be. You know, Jalen Brunson was pretty quiet in the first half, I thought, of that game against the New York Knicks. And then in the second half, he really got it going, and you did not see the New Orleans Pelicans adjust. He had 10 points in the first half. In the second half, Brunson had 29 en route to a 39-point game. Right, his damage all came after the break. The Knicks made adjustments. New Orleans didn't. You know, in the fourth quarter, you saw the Denver Nuggets erase a 9-point New Orleans lead in the matter of like a couple of possessions, essentially. And New Orleans was on the back foot. And look, it's kind of a bit of a miracle that it just went to overtime in the first place, it felt like. They've got to be better at adjusting. You know, one of the things that really stood out to me in that game against the New York Knicks here was that, you know, once Brunson got going and started playing much better and scoring, there was no defensive adjustment from New Orleans whatsoever. You know, you saw them just run the same coverage at him. They didn't trap him. They didn't try and hedge with him. They just literally played him one-on-one and ran their switching scheme where the big will switch onto him and that's that. Just no, I don't even want to say it's creativity. Just know, like, this guy's hot. We got to shut him down. Now, the Knicks are really good. There's a lot of talent in that starting lineup. Bridges is really great. Karl-Anthony Towns is really great. You have, former favorite here, Josh Hart there as well. Those guys can all hit shots, but Towns was having a bad game. Josh Hart, maybe he beats you, but that's better than Jalen Brunson beating you. OG Anunoby is good, but wasn't having a particularly great game. The Knicks weren't shooting well in the first place. Like, double team Jalen Brunson and let anyone else prove that they can do it. And New Orleans has always had an issue with doing this in the Willie Green era. They don't want to deviate a ton from what they do, which is that switching scheme. The other thing they do is they go to a zone a good bit, and they've been doing that more recently just because they haven't had defensive answers. Against the Denver Nuggets, when Jokic got hot in the second half in particular, did you do anything to try and contain him, to stop him? And the answer to that was no. Like, he scored the first couple of possessions, couple of points for the Denver Nuggets in overtime. He just got down low. And look, asking Yves Missi, a 20-year-old rookie, to defend literally the best basketball player on the planet currently is certainly going to be a tough job. And there, if anyone actually knew how to defend Jokic well, he wouldn't be a three-time MVP, whatever it is. And look like he could be winning a fourth, right? Like, he has been that good for the Denver Nuggets. So he had 3 or 4, I can't remember. So obviously no one has an answer to him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be who he is. But you've got to do something. You can't just let some of these players just run over you in the way that they are, and you're just willingly letting them do it. And you're almost complicit in them having such a good game if that's the case. And I hate that. Like, that's disappointing. That's not what we want to see from this team whatsoever. So the defense is looking better in terms of forcing turnovers, then getting out and running. And for while you don't have Ingram, while you don't have Zion, that's going to be the key to getting wins. You got to finish the job here. And this is on the players defending well, not committing bad fouls, things like that. It's on the coaching staff being ready to kind of take advantage of the positions they find themselves in, or just adjusting. And you're not seeing that against the New York Knicks, right? It goes on the offensive side too, that kind of lack of adjustments. Karl-Anthony Towns had 5 fouls in the first half, I believe. And 3 fouls in the first half, right? He was in foul trouble. And instead of going at him, they just let him be hidden on defense and just didn't try and take advantage of that. And that's what's been so frustrating about this team is there are things they can do to be more competitive and not lose a lot of these games by double figures. It's not so much they're losing. We're going to expect them to lose. They're a bad team. Look, that's just a fact right now. They're a bad team. But are they bad enough to be blown out every single night? No, not at all. They could lose by 5. They could lose by 2. It could be 4 like it was against the Denver Nuggets. But some of these games where you're blown out by double digits, by 20 points or more, that to me is what's the most telling thing. How do you look in those defeats? And in a lot of these defeats, I look at New Orleans and rather than kind of commending someone like Jalen Brunson or Nikola Jokic, it's a lot of self-inflicted and errors and decision-making and problems that they're creating for themselves as opposed to the opponents beating you. And that's not a good feeling. If they were losing every game by 3, we'd be like, yeah, what do you expect here? But that hasn't been the case. They've looked flat out bad. And that's not something that is acceptable, in my opinion. And that's why when we're trying to kind of evaluate and judge this season, this isn't good enough. They should be better than this. That's been the theme for the past 2 weeks here on the show. They should be better than they are. Or it's like they shouldn't be as bad as they are is maybe the way to put it. Will Guillory of The Athletic, my guest the other day, agreed with me on that. They've got to figure this out. You can't just play good defense for a half. That's something that look, you have Herb Jones, you have Murray out there, you have Trey Murphy who's been good, you have Missi. Like you have enough guys to be good enough defensively. Figure out a way to finish the game or make adjustments when your opponent does. The counter to the counter. And that's something that New Orleans has been struggling with. Let me know what you think about that in the comments down below here on YouTube. So coming up next, let's look at Trey Murphy playing really good basketball for New Orleans, leaving with an injury. That's not great. And look at Yves Missi as well, because he's been a very big bright spot for the Pelicans. Also touch on Dejounte Murray as well. So some bright spots here. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is sponsored by Built Rewards, B-I-L-T. If you're a renter, listen up, because this is a total game changer. Thanks to Built, you can now earn points on rent payments just like you do with groceries or travel. Paying rent now comes with serious perks and it's completely free to join. Earn valuable Built points on your rent and everyday spending at no extra cost, and redeem points towards flights, hotel stays, even future rent payments. And with over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels in their program, the possibilities are endless. So you can also access unique experiences that are exclusive to Built members. Look, I use my points for travel all the time here. And look, Built makes it easy to turn your rent into rewards. So if you're paying rent already, why not make it work for you? So start earning points on the rent you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. That's joinbuilt, BILT.com/lockedonnba. Make sure to use our link so they know we sent you. Don't wait. Start earning rewards today. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here. Well, not for the Saints, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. Right now, the best thing you can do, honestly, bet against the Pelicans. The spread, the money line. Don't go in on New Orleans. Go in on the opponent and at least make the season, I don't know, maybe a little bit more valuable to you here. You can also get on player props. So which player is going to score a touchdown for the New Orleans Saints in their Monday night game tonight? The over for how each team or the combined score will be in this one against the Green Bay Packers. And you can do this over at FanDuel.com. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And now for your second listen today, go check out the Locked On Saints podcast. Monday night game against Green Bay. Saints are officially eliminated from postseason contention, but there's still important things to play for. And Ross Jackson, host of the Locked On Saints podcast, is making sense of everything black and gold. Make them your second listen today. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's get a couple bright spots for New Orleans here as we start to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And it's going to start with Trey Murphy. Now, look, the cursed season continues because, of course, he leaves the game against the Denver Nuggets in the third quarter with an ankle injury, did not return. And that was after he had 21 points on 16 shot attempts. He's been playing really good basketball. For the past about 2 weeks now, he's averaging almost 25 points per game, I think is what it is, 22 points per game, and shooting the ball extremely well now that he's back from that hamstring injury. Against the Denver Nuggets tonight, 21 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 3 of 7 from deep, so that's 43%, 9 of 16 overall. 21 points on 16 shot attempts is really good efficiency. You're seeing the rebounding get better. You're seeing the defense get better from him. And against the New York Knicks, he also had a good game. 26 points on 11 of 18 shooting, 3 of 8 from deep, which is also good, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks. You're seeing a more well-rounded, less specialist feeling version of Trey Murphy when he's out there on the court with the way he's playing now. And what's most impressive from him is that he's been creating his own offense. You know, when you look at him, the one thing I wanted him to try and add going into this season as he continues to grow and he's now on a big, $20 million extension, you wanted to see him kind of create his own offense. And in a sense, you also wanted to see him that when he drives to the rim, have more of a plan. 3-point shooter and a dunker. We know this. We know he's capable of that. But after a team closes out on him pretty hard on the perimeter, if he drives down into the paint to try and score, if someone just kind of gets in his way, it would lead to him just going to the hard dunk attempt that he would often miss or force something into a turnover. But you're seeing a Euro step. You're seeing a couple more moves just getting to the basket and getting around defenders, weaving in and out of traffic a little bit, and being able to score at the rim at a much more efficient and better rate than he was before. That's really important growth, right? This is the type of player that will fit around any star player New Orleans gets, whether they continue to build around Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, or someone in the upcoming draft. Trey is a guy that every team wants because he just fits. And seeing his growth and kind of showing that in the future, is he maybe a number 2 guy as opposed to a number 3? Or was he a kind of number 4 guy and now he's a number 3? You're seeing him kind of take like a half step forward in what we think of his ceiling potentially being. Look, that's important now for New Orleans because they need someone to lead him, and you can really see Trey Murphy trying to be the leading scorer for this team, without Brandon Ingram, without Zion Williamson, and he's doing a really good job of that, I think. We got to wait to see what the injury is, but overall, you've seen some growth and a slight leap, which is all you're looking for right now from Trey Murphy, and that's been really great to see. Let's just please hope this injury isn't anything serious because, yeah, it's been that kind of year for the Pelicans. Yves Missi has also played, I think, exceptionally well for this team over the past handful of games. Against the Denver Nuggets, 21 points on 12 shot attempts. He was getting to the line and scoring that way. 9 of 12 for 21 points, 9 rebounds, an assist, 2 steals, 3 blocks, including an impressive one on Nikola Jokic. That was truly awesome. He's been just the brightest spot for New Orleans. You've seen the footwork get better. You're seeing him be more of a post presence down low, something that this team needs, that you kind of need in today's version of the NBA. He's been truly awesome, in my opinion. And for a 20-year-old rookie kind of forced to play the role that he is, significantly more minutes than we were thinking. Look, I was entirely wrong I thought he would contribute in 3 years. I didn't think he was going to be this impactful of a player this soon. And you could really see it in this game against the Denver Nuggets, especially in that first half when he was just doing work. Was awesome to see. Also nice to see Jordan Hawkins really kind of get back into the flow of things. 5 of 13 from 3. New Orleans took 43 point attempts. That's their magic number. That's the goal that they'll never realistically hit. But they did a really good job of getting those shot attempts up. Hawkins knocked him down. They've got to find a way to get him shots in clutch situations or make him more of a threat there. The fact that he didn't take anything in overtime after 25 points and being the leading scorer for this team is inexcusable, in my opinion. You also probably saw the best point guard game, I thought, from Dejounte Murray in this. New Orleans was good enough to win against the Denver Nuggets. 17 points, but also 6 steals. The defense has been really good for him the past couple games, coinciding with the Pelicans' defense being better. 15 assists, 8 rebounds. The shot's not falling, but he's trying to make an impact in other ways. Well, it was looking a little bleak with him out there on the court. This is making you feel a little bit better about the role that he can play. The turnovers have been cut down the past 2 games. The assists are up. That's really important. The ball movement slightly better. I'm not ready to be like he's good because he hasn't been good for New Orleans yet, but you can kind of see the vision. They just need to sort through this late game stuff, figure that out, kind of have a plan. Who's your shot? Who's going to take the shot? Who's setting up the shot? Those things, build the hierarchy out so everyone knows their role. You got to get involved with Dejounte Murray with that too, but it's 2 more losses if you want him to tank. Look, they're looking good for that. Even the Wizards won the other night. So next win for New Orleans really might not come till January against the Washington Wizards. That's what it's looking like here. But another back-to-back coming up real soon here. We'll, of course, break it all down and have a whole week's worth of shows. We're getting into coaching, front office, firings, keep them, what's going on there. That's going to be in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans, the episode you will not want to miss. So I appreciate y'all so much for listening to today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll see y'all tomorrow.